Before the first gunshot of Red Dead Redemption 2, before the first robbery, and before Arthur Morgan says much of anything, the world gives us animals. Horses strain through the snow, a deer hangs across the saddle. Somewhere beyond the lantern light, wolves are moving between the trees. The gang believes the mountains are empty because no people live there. But the mountains are already crowded with lives that do not care about Dutch's plans. That is a fitting way to enter this world, because its animals are never mere scenery. They wake before towns do. They hunt while arguments unfold in camp. They leave tracks across snow that will soon cover the tracks of men. Long after an outlaw has passed through a valley, the ravens come down. The river keeps its fish, and a whitetail steps cautiously back into the road. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the frontier take its time. If these long, quiet journeys through Red Dead Redemption 2 have become part of your evenings, you can leave a gentle like and share the animal you always stop to watch, even when there is no practical reason to stop. Tonight the route is longer than any hunting trail. It begins among the frozen shapes of Amberino, follows the herds across the heartlands, listens at the edges of forests and farms, sinks into the warm water of Lemoyne, crosses the desert, and even remembers the bright creatures left behind on Guarma. There is no need to memorize a ledger. The names will arrive where they belong, inside weather and habitat, attached to the sounds and habits that make each creature feel alive. The game's own compendium separates its living world into neighbouring books. There are 178 entries on the animal pages, while fish and horses are given ledgers of their own. That division is useful for keeping records, though nature pays no attention to menus. A bald eagle takes a fish from water. A cougar frightens a horse. A ranch dog barks at a fox slipping toward the chickens. Everything overlaps. Rockstar described the world as holding around 200 species of animals, birds and fish, each shaped to respond to its surroundings in a particular way. The number is impressive, but the deeper achievement is that these creatures rarely feel like 200 models placed on a map. They feel as though the map grew around them. Arthur's first act toward an unfamiliar animal can be simple observation. Through binoculars or a rifle scope, he studies the creature until its name enters his notebook. He can track it by broken stems, disturbed ground, scent and footprints. He can learn which bait draws it out, what it eats, where it prefers to live, and which weapon can kill it without ruining the hide. The verbs are revealing. Study comes before kill. Track comes before skin. Knowledge is placed beside violence, and the uneasy closeness between them runs through every hunt. Arthur can be a naturalist for half a minute, carefully admiring the shape of an elk, then become the reason it stops moving. Quality makes that discomfort harder to ignore. A rabbit is not simply a rabbit once the rifle comes up. Its condition may be poor, good, or perfect. The right ammunition matters, as does the placement of the shot. A repeater that drops a fox cleanly can destroy a squirrel. A varmint rifle suited to a rabbit is wrong for a bison. Small game arrows ask for patience with creatures so light that ordinary ammunition leaves almost nothing worth carrying. The system quietly discourages careless fire, not by forbidding it, but by making waste visible. A damaged pelt sells for less. A torn carcass cannot become the satchel or coat Arthur wanted. Bad hunting leaves evidence in his hands. Wounded animals sometimes leave an even heavier kind of evidence. A shot that fails to kill can send a deer stumbling through the grass until its trail ends beside a trembling body. Arthur may finish the animal with his knife, and the sound is deliberately difficult to hear. There is no triumphant flourish. The moment is brief, intimate, and miserable. Many games turn hunting into an instant exchange between ammunition and materials. Red Dead Redemption 2 leaves a few seconds in between, just long enough for mercy and guilt to become the same action. The first wild animals to challenge Arthur directly are grey wolves in the grizzlies. They emerge during the search for John, lean shapes moving through a storm that has erased most of the world. Wolves in this game rarely feel like solitary monsters. They approach as a pack, separate to create pressure and turn the quiet of a forest into a ring of movement. Later, away from missions and gunfire, they reveal other lives. Wolves can play together. They can rest, hunt, circle prey, and gather near a fallen member. Travellers have watched one remain beside another's body and howl. Whether every such moment is meant as mourning or simply produced by overlapping animal behaviours, it creates the same pause. The pack seems to notice absence. The compendium distinguishes the grey wolf from the timber wolf. Both occupy the colder, forested reaches of the map, particularly Amberino and northern West Elizabeth, though their coats and distribution differ. A timber wolf's dark shape can disappear among pines before it closes the distance. The grey wolf is often easier to see against open snow, which does not make it less dangerous. Their tracks tell of the pack before the first growl does. A horse may sense them earlier than Arthur, tossing its head and fighting the reins while the rider still sees nothing but tree trunks. That reaction matters, because horses carry fear in their bodies. They are brave enough to cross a battlefield, but courage depends on breed, bonding, distance, and what is waiting in the brush. A snake beneath the hooves can startle them. A cougar's cry can turn control into panic. Alligators make them refuse water. Reassurance is physical. Arthur leans down, pats the neck, and speaks until the animal steadies. The relationship is never completely under his command. A horse has its own threshold, and when that threshold breaks, even a legendary outlaw can be thrown into the path of what frightened it. High in the grizzlies, the Rocky Mountain bull elk and Rocky Mountain cow elk move through pine woods and open slopes. The bull carries antlers that make its silhouette look older than the trees around it. The cow is plainer, lighter, and no less essential to the herd. Elk often announce themselves with calls that travel farther than their bodies can be seen. A hunter may hear one across a valley and begin following sound rather than tracks. Their size encourages a clean rifle shot or a carefully chosen arrow. Their hides are heavy, the meat useful, and their antlers become material, but the living animal is most memorable when it crosses a pale hillside at dawn, unhurried because it has not yet noticed the man below. Moose are larger and far less dependable. The western bull moose, crowned by broad antlers, and the antlerless western moose prefer remote water, cold forest, and northern country. They are famous partly because so many searches end without one. Lake Oangela, Brandywine Drop, the edge of Cairn Lake, and the high country near Coulter may all seem right, yet a moose can remain absent for days. That scarcity changes the mood of finding one. It does not feel spawned for a task. It feels encountered. Sometimes one is swimming with only its head and antlers above the surface, crossing a lake by a route that belongs entirely to it. The bighorn sheep divide themselves according to country. Rocky Mountain bighorn rams and sheep belong among steep northern slopes. Sierra Nevada bighorn rams and sheep appear farther west. Desert bighorn rams and sheep live where stone has been burned dry in New Austin. The males carry curled horns, heavy and close to the skull, while the females are less ornate. Rams can be seen striking one another, their bodies backing away and gathering force before impact. It is a small drama without a mission marker. On cliffs where a person must choose each step, they move with an ease that makes the mountain seem designed for hooves rather than boots. The snow country also belongs to the rough-legged hawk. Unlike the red-tailed and ferruginous hawks found across warmer open lands, this bird feels suited to bare branches, cold air and long views. Hawks ride currents above the terrain, but they are not empty shapes circling for atmosphere. They watch the ground. At the right moment one can fold into a dive after a snake, rabbit, or other small prey. What seems like a decorative speck becomes a hunt already underway. Arthur may be tracking one animal while another predator completes its own work overhead. Golden eagles and bald eagles hold the sky with even greater weight. The bald eagle tends toward rivers and large bodies of water, its white head making it unmistakable once the binoculars settle. The golden eagle belongs more naturally to mountains and dry cliffs. Both can seize prey. An eagle rising with a fish in its talons briefly connects the fish ledger to the bird ledger and exposes how artificial those neat categories are. The water has fed the sky. A feather drifting down after a shot is valuable for crafting, yet the bird alive above a canyon carries something no inventory can hold. 3 horned owls divide the night: the Californian horned owl, coastal horned owl, and great horned owl. Their names point toward different regions, but all are more easily heard than seen. An owl often begins as a call in darkness, followed by a search of roofs, dead trees, and high branches. The great horned owl has the widest presence. The Californian variety favours the western and southwestern map, while the coastal owl suits the wetter east. Their stillness is unlike a songbird's nervous pause. An owl sits as though night has placed it there, and may leave only when the barrel turns upward. The little brown bat occupies darkness in another way. Bats leave caves, cabins, and shadowed interiors in quick, uneven flight. They are easy to miss because they appear where the eye is already struggling, and because their bodies are small enough to vanish between one wing beat and the next. Finding one for the compendium may involve standing near a cave mouth at the right hour, looking into a space that seems empty until the emptiness begins to move. They add life to abandoned places. A mine may have lost its workers, but it has not become uninhabited. Cold lakes hold 3 loons: the common loon, Pacific loon, and yellow-billed loon. Their low shapes sit close to the water, built for diving rather than walking. Calls carry across open lakes with a lonely, wavering quality that no orchestral score needs to improve. The Pacific and yellow-billed varieties are less common than the ordinary loon, making a distant bird worth studying before it slips beneath the surface. Loons make a mountain lake feel large. One call can place miles of dark water between the shore and whatever answered. The Canada goose crosses several regions in lines that pull the eye upward. Mallard ducks gather around rivers and marshes, while Pekin ducks are more often domestic, pale birds kept near farms. The distinction between wild and tame is visible before any label appears. A mallard lifts from reeds in alarm. A Pekin duck waddles through a yard made safe by fences and people. Yet both can end as feathers and meat. The game does not create a moral wall between wilderness and livestock. It merely changes who may become angry when a gun is fired. The grizzly bear turns the northern woods into a place of negotiation. It is larger and generally more aggressive than the American black bear, though either animal can kill a careless traveller. a grizzly may rear, roar and charge. In some encounters, a person who stands firm can witness something startlingly close to a bluff. The bear rushes forward and turns away at the final moment. Trusting that possibility is another matter. The sensible response is distance, a calm horse, and a weapon strong enough to end the danger. But the possibility that the bear is warning rather than attacking makes every approach uncertain. Black bears often choose escape. Their dark coats pass between trees in Big Valley, Roanoke Ridge, and the northern woods, and the first glimpse may be the animal already running. The name can mislead, because coat colour alone is not a perfect guide to species in the real world, but the game's models and behaviour separate them clearly enough. A black bear can climb through rough terrain with surprising speed. It is a large omnivore that would be terrifying in almost any other setting, yet beside the grizzly, it becomes the bear people are relieved to meet. One grizzly is given a name that sounds as if it came from a story told long before Arthur arrived. The legendary Barati grizzly bear first appears during a hunt with Hosea near O'Cree's Run. Hosea has spent years beside men who think they are dangerous, yet the bear reduces both him and Arthur to frightened bodies in the dirt. The encounter teaches the form of every legendary hunt to come. Find signs, follow clues, enter a territory where ordinary rules feel thinner, and meet a creature whose size and colouring have passed into local myth. Arthur can remain and hunt it, or return later with better tools. The bear is patient either way. Legendary animals cannot have their pelts ruined in story mode, a useful exception that changes the hunt from surgical harvesting into survival. Their parts become trinkets, talismans, clothing, and permanent advantages. So the animal remains with Arthur in altered form. The Barati bear's claw contributes to a talisman that slows the draining of his health core. The old hunting belief that strength can pass from animal to human becomes a mechanic. These creatures are killed, but the game refuses to let them become ordinary stock at a butcher's counter. Leaving the deep snow, the country opens gradually. Trees spread apart. White ground gives way to brown grass. The first common lives to fill that openness are white-tailed deer and white-tailed bucks, so familiar that it is easy to stop seeing them. Does travel without antlers, bucks carry branching racks and often stand a little apart. Their tails flash white as they flee, a warning signal repeated across field after field. Because they are common, they become the foundation of hunting. Arthur learns distance, scent, cover and shot placement on animals that have spent their own lives learning how to notice danger. Whitetails also reveal the difference between abundance and simplicity. Bucks can spar, graze, drink, startle at predators, and gather near forest edges where cover is close. A deer found in the road at night is not the same encounter as one watched through mist at sunrise. The model may be familiar, but weather, light, terrain and behaviour keep changing the sentence around it. Deer provide venison and hides for camp, yet they also supply the world with motion. A field without them feels strangely unfinished. Pronghorns take over where grassland becomes broad and dry. They resemble antelope, though they belong to a distinct North American family and are the only surviving members of it. The compendium recognizes American pronghorn bucks, and does in New Hanover and West Elizabeth, then Sonoran pronghorn bucks and does, and Baja California pronghorn bucks and does in New Austin. Their pale bodies and dark markings suit open country. Speed is their defence. Once a pronghorn breaks into a run, the hunt becomes a contest between patience and the temptation to fire badly. The American bison does not flee with the same lightness. It moves like a piece of the plain that has decided to walk. A herd south of Valentine or across the heartlands changes the scale of the land, making horses and people look temporary. The compendium treats the bison as one entry, but the story gives it far more weight. By 1899, its presence carries the memory of millions already killed. What Arthur sees is not an untouched abundance, it is a remnant. Charles Smith understands that immediately. When he and Arthur find bison shot and abandoned, with bodies left to rot rather than used, his anger is about more than wasted meat. The commercial slaughter of bison was tied to hide markets, railroad expansion, and deliberate pressure on indigenous nations whose food, tools, shelter, and cultural life were bound to the herds. The game does not stop for a lecture. It puts carcasses in the grass and lets Charles explain why waste can be a form of hatred. The animal becomes part of history without losing its physical presence as an animal. A living herd therefore changes the rhythm of a hunt. Arthur can shoot a bison and harvest almost every practical part, but firing repeatedly into the group feels different after riding with Charles. The animals do not become invulnerable because the story respects them. Respect must come from restraint. That is one of the sharper choices in the wildlife design. Moral meaning exists beside freedom, and the world does not always prevent a person from doing the thing it has taught him to regret. The heartlands are full of smaller lives moving beneath the height of grass. The black-tailed jackrabbit runs in long, sudden bounds, its ears visible before the rest of it. The western chipmunk is small enough to become a flicker near rocks and fallen timber. American red squirrels, western grey squirrels, and black squirrels move through different forests and climates, climbing, stopping, and vanishing into cover. Each requires a lighter kind of attention. A rider looking only toward the horizon will pass 100 of them without knowing the ground was busy. Rabbits and squirrels also teach the purpose of small game arrows and the varmint rifle. The difference between a perfect carcass and a ruined one can be the difference between a careful, almost absurdly delicate shot and ordinary ammunition. Hunting requests later ask for pristine little bodies, turning familiar animals into tests of observation. Suddenly the rabbit that once crossed every road becomes impossible to find in exactly the condition required. The world has not changed. Attention has. Prairie chickens rise out of grass with a burst that can startle both horse and rider. The greater prairie chicken belongs to open country, while the ring-necked pheasant and Chinese ring-necked pheasant favour other fields and edges. California quail appear farther southwest, quick ground birds often found in groups. Eastern wild turkeys occupy the eastern half of the map. Rio Grande wild turkeys belong to the drier west. All of them live close to the line between wildlife and food. Their feathers have uses, their meat goes to the fire, and their sudden flight can make an empty field reveal how many bodies were hidden inside it. Coyotes travel the same plains with a more watchful gait. The California Valley coyote is the compendium's single ordinary coyote, despite a range that crosses much of the map. It often appears alone or in a loose pair, turning its head toward a rider before deciding whether to run. Coyotes are smaller than wolves and less willing to close directly, though hunger can pull them toward carcasses. Their calls at night create distance. One animal on a ridge can make the whole plain seem awake. Foxes come in 3 recorded forms: the American red fox, American grey fox, and silver fox. The silver fox is not a separate species, but a dark colour form of the red fox. a distinction the compendium translates into its own entry. Red foxes bring a bright warmth to forest edges. Grey foxes blend more quietly into woodland. Silver foxes appear almost black under poor light. All three are omnivorous, alert and quick. In snow country, a fox may listen for movement beneath the surface, leap upward, and dive nose first into the powder after hidden prey. It is a tiny act of hunting built for no human benefit, easy to miss and impossible to forget once seen. Badgers keep closer to earth. The American badger is broad, low, and more aggressive than its size suggests. It favours drier ground and often appears after dusk, which makes its striped face materialise out of low light. The striped skunk is similarly close to the ground, but carries a defence that warns rather than chases. A skunk may lift its tail and turn, offering a brief chance to reconsider. The consequences are comic by frontier standards, though the animal's warning is serious. It survives by persuading larger creatures that distance is wise. Raccoons and Virginia opossums belong to the secret life of night. The North American raccoon searches near water, woods, farms and roads with a thief's careful hands. The opossum has the more famous performance. Chase it, threaten it, and it may collapse as though dead. The master hunter challenges eventually ask Arthur to kill an opossum while it is playing possum, turning a real defensive behaviour into a grim little test. Approach too casually before that final act, and the body may rise and scurry away, revealing that death was only an argument the animal hoped the predator would believe. American muskrats and North American beavers shape the edges of water. Muskrats are smaller, common along rivers and marshes, and surprisingly ready to bite if cornered. Beavers carry a larger reputation because their work changes the landscape. Near Owanjila and other waterways, felled trunks and dams suggest activity before the animals appear. A beaver swimming leaves a low wake. On land it seems awkward, in water it becomes exactly suited to its world. The legendary beaver near Butcher Creek takes that ordinary engineering and enlarges it into folklore, its pale coat turning a practical river animal into a creature people might describe for years. Here the trail begins to narrow into forest. Big Valley waits ahead with elk in the meadows, bears under the trees, and something quieter moving, where the grass is tall enough to hide teeth. The open plains teach a hunter to look far. The western woods teach him to distrust what is close. Cougars rarely give much warning. They favour rocky slopes, forest margins, and lonely roads in places such as Big Valley, Roanoke Ridge, and the far west. A red threat may appear at the edge of awareness only after the cat has begun its charge. Horses recognise the danger immediately. The cougar is low enough to vanish behind brush, fast enough to cross open ground before a second shot, and strong enough to kill Arthur in a single close attack. Unlike a wolf pack, which announces itself through many bodies, a cougar turns absence into danger. The creature is frightening, because there seems to be nothing there until there is almost no time left. Its hunting behaviour explains the silence. A cougar survives through ambush, using cover and patience rather than a long pursuit. The game simplifies real predation into readable danger, but it preserves the essential feeling of entering another animal's advantage. In a field, Arthur has sightlines. Among trees, the cat owns the distance between trunks. A dead deer or mauled body near a known range can serve as a warning. So can the sudden refusal of a horse to continue. The landscape has begun speaking in signs before the predator shows itself. The legendary cougar waits beyond ordinary access in Gaptooth Ridge. Part of the country opened fully in the epilogue. Its dark red coat suits the desert rock, and reaching it as John gives the hunt an odd lateness. Arthur can master nearly every form of frontier hunting, yet some animals belong to the world that follows him. The cougar's fang becomes a trinket associated with Deadeye, carrying the quick concentration of an ambush predator into the gunfighter who survived it. Big Valley offers gentler scenes as well. Elk graze in the purple meadow around Little Creek River. Pronghorns move through open stretches while beavers work closer to water. Grizzlies wander out from the forest, and black bears flee through berry country. These overlapping ranges give the valley a rare fullness. It is open enough to watch animals at a distance, and enclosed enough for one to surprise you. Morning mist turns every shape uncertain. A bull elk may rise out of it like a statue, while a bear becomes visible only when a dark patch begins to move against darker trees. North and east, Roanoke Ridge makes wildlife feel less pastoral. The land is scarred by mining, poisoned water, abandoned workings, and the noise of industry from Annesburg. Deer still pass between trees. Cougars still hunt. Black bears and wolves remain. Yet their habitat now shares space with cut timber, polluted streams, and human violence. The animals do not deliver speeches about Cornwall's machinery. Their continued presence is enough. A buck stepping through a ruined mining settlement makes civilization look temporary. A sickly stream with no healthy fish makes it look powerful in the worst way. Crows and ravens thrive wherever the border between life and death has thinned. The American crow appears across much of the map, smaller and more familiar, while the western raven is larger and carries a deeper call. Both gather around carcasses. Turkey vultures circle above open country, with eastern and western varieties roughly matching their halves of the map. A circling vulture is practical information. Something may be dead below, perhaps an animal, perhaps a traveller, perhaps the remains of a story Arthur has not yet found. The Californian condor occupies the far southwest sky. It is broader and rarer than the vultures, most at home above New Austin's cliffs and desert. By 1899, real condors were already suffering from shooting, poisoning, egg collecting, and habitat pressure, though the species' worst collapse came much later. Inside the game, the bird gives the desert a prehistoric scale. It barely needs to flap. Its wings hold it above a country where almost everything else seems pressed close to the heat. Scavengers complete an ecological process the game refuses to hide. Leave a carcass and time changes it. Birds and other animals may feed. The body decays, its value falls, and eventually bones remain. A clean hunting scene becomes a place of flies, torn hide, and exposed ribs. This persistence gives death weight beyond the instant of a shot. It also lets one animal feed several others. A deer killed by Arthur can become meat for camp, bait for a predator, and food for ravens, depending on what he takes and what he abandons. Hawks occupy a cleaner-looking version of predation because their killings happen quickly and often at a distance. Ferruginous hawks favour open grasslands and dry country. Red-tailed hawks are widespread and recognisable, often perched where roads and fields meet. Rough-legged hawks belong farther north. Their differences are easy to flatten when all three are silhouettes in the sky. But the compendium encourages a longer look. Tail colour, underside, habitat and size turn an anonymous bird into a particular neighbour. Woodpeckers demand that same patience among trees. The red-bellied woodpecker is smaller and more common in eastern woodland. The pileated woodpecker is larger, with a bold crest and a call that carries through forest. Both spend much of their time on trunks rather than open ground. Their presence reminds us that the woods have vertical roads. Squirrels, woodpeckers, songbirds, and climbing cats use a world above Arthur's ordinary line of travel, a network of bark and branch that a horse passes beneath without entering. Blue jays are easier to hear than to study. Their sharp calls cut through woodland, and their blue wings flash between branches. Northern cardinals stand out for the opposite reason. The male's red body seems almost too bright for a muted frontier. Cedar waxwings arrive in softer colours, with smooth crests and yellow-tipped tails. American robins carry the familiar warm breast of gardens and forest edges. None of these birds can threaten Arthur or feed a camp for long. Their purpose is simply the purpose birds have in a real morning. They make silence textured. The Baltimore oriole and hooded oriole bring orange and yellow into the canopy. Scarlet tanager and western tanager songbirds divide colour across eastern and western ranges. The scarlet tanager's red body and dark wings suit the greener east, while the western tanager belongs across drier country. Their names reward geography. A person who knows which tanager he saw has learned something about where he is, not merely what crossed the scope. Sparrows make the smallest distinctions. The Eurasian tree sparrow, American tree sparrow, and golden crown sparrow can look like variations on a brown idea until light, markings, and range separate them. The Eurasian bird also hints at movement beyond the map, an introduced species living among native ones. They are among the most frustrating creatures to study or collect because the body is tiny, the flight sudden, and the branch crowded. That frustration creates a strange intimacy. To find a sparrow, Arthur must stop behaving like the loudest thing in the woods. Band-tailed pigeons occupy wild and wooded areas, while rock pigeons gather around human settlement. The latter are city birds, comfortable on roofs, telegraph lines, and stone ledges. Their presence in St. Denis feels natural because pigeons have always been good at turning architecture into cliff. Band-tailed pigeons keep more distance and retain the mood of forest. The same family has divided itself around human construction, one branch remaining among trees and another learning that people leave grain, warmth, and shelter behind them. Roads eventually lead out of woodland and toward fenced country. Here the wild animal ledger begins to mix with lives owned by people. The Florida cracker cow grazes around ranches, adapted in name and history to the cattle country of the southeast. Bulls appear as Angus, Devon, and Hereford breeds, massive bodies whose danger comes from proximity rather than predation. Angus and Devon oxen are castrated working cattle, built for pulling and patience. A bull may charge when provoked. An ox carries the quieter strength that built roads, moved timber, and hauled loads before engines took over. Domestic cattle alter the meaning of killing. The Angus bull, Devon bull, and Hereford bull are distinct entries, as are the working Angus ox and Devon ox. A deer belongs to no shopkeeper. A cow usually belongs to someone with a fence, a rifle, or a reason to report a crime. Perfect hides may be needed for crafting, yet acquiring them can mean trespass, theft, and a shot taken in darkness. Hunting mechanics have crossed into property law. The animal is still an animal, but civilization has placed a price and an owner around it. The alpine goat appears around farms, cabins, and ranches, a hardy animal whose horns and narrow face make it seem ready to escape any enclosure. Merino sheep gather in managed flocks, their wool linking them to the clothing worn throughout the world. Sheep also carry one of the game's stranger little secrets. A lost animal may be found wearing a pink ribbon and a wedding ring, the remains of a human story too uncomfortable and absurd to explain plainly. Even livestock can become evidence of lives conducted at the edge of good sense. Pigs come in Berkshire, Big China and Old Spot varieties. Their pens are muddy, noisy places, often close to slaughter sheds or farm buildings. They eat broadly and root through ground that cows merely cross. The Big China reflects a breed developed from imported Chinese pigs crossed with European stock. The Berkshire and Old Spot carry their own recognisable colouring. The distinctions are more precise than the story requires. That unnecessary precision is part of why a farm feels inhabited rather than furnished. 3 chicken breeds divide further into hens and roosters: Dominique, Java and Leghorn. The Dominique has barred feathers, the Java is a heavy American breed, and the Leghorn is lighter and associated with prolific laying. Roosters announce morning whether Arthur is ready for it or not. Hens scratch through yards, scatter at footsteps, and turn a farm into a place with routines. The greater prairie chicken, despite its name, remains a wild grassland bird and does not belong in these coops. The shared word quietly preserves the visual resemblance while habitat keeps the animals apart. Dogs carry the strongest sense of individual social life among domestic animals. They bark at strangers, follow owners, wander streets, guard property, and sometimes approach Arthur for affection. He can praise them and lean down to pat them. A small act of kindness toward a dog has no grand strategic value. It merely lets Arthur be gentle in a story where his hands are asked to do terrible work. Different breeds fit different corners of the world. The American foxhound and Bluetic coonhound belong to hunting country, noses and stamina shaped for following scent. Bloodhounds look built from loose skin and patient attention, often associated with tracking. The Catahoula cur fits the southern world of swamps, hogs and rough farms. The Chesapeake Bay Retriever, or Labrador Retriever, seems at home near water and birds. These are not random dog models with labels attached. Their breeds echo the labour people expect them to perform. Border Collies and Australian Shepherds belong near livestock, alert to movement in a flock. The Siberian Husky suits colder places and brings the look of northern work into settlements at the edge of snow. Poodles appear in more polished surroundings, a reminder that the world contains fashion and companionship alongside ranch labour. Mutts belong everywhere because real towns have always been full of dogs whose ancestry mattered less than whether they could survive beside people. Rufus is the one dog the compendium treats as an individual. He lives with the Marstons at Beecher's Hope, old, familiar, and woven into the family rather than merely placed on the property. Jack loves him. John can greet him. Rufus helps the ranch feel like a home, because homes remember particular animals by name. The compendium's long procession of species pauses for one elderly dog, acknowledging that classification changes when affection enters the picture. The American domestic cat receives no list of breeds. Cats appear in towns and ranches, passing beneath wagons or sitting near buildings, with the self-possession of creatures that consider themselves residents rather than property. Arthur can greet them. They do not offer the same eager response as dogs, which feels correct. A cat near a stable also hints at work, keeping rats away from grain, though the game rarely needs to state the arrangement. Human settlements create food for rodents, cats follow the rodents, another small chain forms inside civilization. Black rats and brown rats thrive where people concentrate waste. They move through caves, docks, alleys, saloons, abandoned structures, and the poisoned town of Limpany. St. Denis provides plenty of dark corners. So do mines and cellars. Their presence is unglamorous but honest. A city containing only horses and ornamental birds would feel scrubbed clean. Rats reveal what exists beneath prosperity, feeding on whatever falls through the boards. Donkeys and mules occupy the working edge of the horse world. The standard donkey is smaller, stubborn in reputation, and commonly tied to farms or freight. A mule born from horse and donkey parentage combines strength and endurance, but is generally sterile. Neither receives the romance given to Arthur's chosen mount. They carry loads, pull, weight, and stand near the people whose labour depends on them. Their plainness is historical truth. The West was not moved by magnificent stallions alone. Horses receive their own compendium because no other animal is asked to do so many things. They are transportation, companionship, status, inventory, and sometimes the only living presence beside Arthur on a long road. 19 breeds appear in story mode, but breed is only the beginning. Coat, sex, handling, speed, stamina, health, courage, and bonding all alter how a horse feels. Two animals sharing a breed can still become different memories because one carried Arthur through a storm and the other threw him at the first snake. The Tennessee Walker is the modest beginning. The kind of horse a tired outlaw can inherit rather than dream about. Kentucky Saddlers and Morgans are common riding horses, found under travellers and in the wild. American Standardbreds and Thoroughbreds emphasise speed, though speed without confidence can become a fast route into trouble. The Nakota, compact and agile, can be found in the West. Mustangs carry the romance of feral survival, tough animals shaped by open country rather than stable polish. American paints and Appaloosas wear some of the most recognisable coats, patterns that make an individual visible from far away. Andalusians, Ardennes and Hungarian half-breds lean toward war and strength. Belgian draft horses, Shires and Suffolk punches bring the weight of haulage, large bodies bred to pull what a lighter horse cannot. Dutch warmbloods sit comfortably between riding and work. Each breed places a different history under the saddle, from European bloodlines to American ranch needs. At the rare end are Arabians, Missouri foxtrotters, and Turkomans. The white Arabian near Lake Isabella has become almost a legend outside the game's legendary animal system, a pale, nervous shape waiting in brutal cold. The Missouri foxtrotter combines pace with endurance and a distinctive gaiting heritage. The Turkoman carries the old mixture of racing and warhorse qualities. Their statistics make them desirable, but the best horse is often the one whose name a person remembers after the final ride. Bonding grows through ordinary care. Feeding, brushing, patting, leading, hitching, and simply covering distance together increase trust. A bonded horse responds from farther away and performs movements unavailable to a stranger. Its coat gathers mud. Its breathing changes with effort. In cold air its breath clouds. Neglect lowers its condition. A brush and a meal restore more than numbers because the animations make care visible. The game understands that affection often grows through maintenance, not spectacle. The stable turns living animals into commerce. Horses are bought, sold, named, equipped, and compared. Saddles improve performance, stirrups alter drain. Yet outside the stable menu, a horse remains vulnerable. It can be injured, revived, frightened, stolen, or killed. Losing one is painful partly because the systems have required time. The dead animal cannot be recreated merely by purchasing the same breed and coat. The new horse does not carry the old bond. That truth reaches its hardest form near the end of Arthur's story. When his horse falls during the escape, he stops in the middle of collapse to say thank you. The exact scene changes with the strength of the bond, but its emotional meaning has been built across every brush, carrot, whistle, and shared mile. An animal with almost no spoken story becomes part of Arthur's final accounting. He has so little time, yet he gives some of it to gratitude. Other named horses deepen the connection. Hosea's silver-coated Turcoman, Silver Dollar, suits an older outlaw who values taste and reliability. Dutch rides the striking white Arabian called the Count, a horse as theatrical as its owner and famously unwilling to accept most other riders. Sadie's horse, Bob, carries her into the life she builds after loss. Charles rides Timer. John eventually gains Rachel. Hamish Sinclair's golden Dutch warmblood, Buell, can pass to Arthur or John, carrying the memory of a veteran who trusted the horse before trusting the man. Wild horses gather in small groups and flee as a group, but one can be approached, calmed, mounted, and broken. The process is intimate and forceful at once. Arthur speaks softly while imposing a new relationship on an animal that had none with him. Once the struggle ends, the horse can become loyal enough to answer a whistle across danger. The frontier celebrates this as skill. The game leaves enough resistance in the animal to show what the skill is overcoming. Civilization depends on animals even as it claims to be replacing the wild. Stagecoaches need teams, wagons need draft horses and mules, farms need oxen, towns need dogs, cats, chickens and pigs. Saloons serve meat carried in from somewhere beyond the walls. The train seems like the machine that will make animal power obsolete, yet its stations remain crowded with hitched horses. In 1899, a mechanical future has arrived, but it still smells of hay, leather, sweat, and manure. Beyond the last ranch fence, water begins to spread through the land. Dewberry Creek feeds low ground. Flat Iron Lake opens into distance. Farther south, soil darkens and trees gather hanging moss. The animal sounds change before the map does. Frogs begin calling. Long-legged birds lift from the reeds. A horse slows at the edge of water, because something old and armoured is waiting beneath it. The American alligator changes every journey through Bayou Noir. It can lie so still that its armoured back resembles wet timber. The ordinary adult is enormous. The compendium also records the American alligator, which shares the swamps and shorelines without carrying quite the same threat. Both make shallow water uncertain. An alligator may remain motionless while Arthur passes at a respectful distance, but a close approach brings a sudden hiss, turn, and rush. The horse's fear is often the earliest warning, and forcing it forward can end with Arthur in the mud, while the alligator closes its jaws. Alligators are strangely generous resources for hunters. Their skin can become saddles and equipment, teeth become crafting material, fat feeds useful recipes, and big game meat provides one of the strongest meals available. Yet their abundance in the bayou prevents them from feeling like treasure chests. They are part of the architecture. Bodies line muddy islands, mouths open in the heat. Eyes sit just above water. A person crossing the swamp learns to root around them the way a traveller in town roots around buildings. The legendary bullgator enlarges this ordinary danger until it feels ancient. It appears in the story during the chaos around Lagras, a pale, scarred animal moving through fog and panic. Unlike most legendary creatures, it cannot simply be hunted the moment Hosea gives Arthur the map. The story must pass through a later chapter before the animal's territory opens properly. Its delay gives the bullgator a haunting quality. Arthur has already seen it. Somewhere in the marsh it continues to exist, waiting for unfinished business. When the hunt finally begins, clues lead through a landscape already designed to conceal it. The bullgator's white hide should make it easy to see, but reeds, mist and low ground break the body into pieces. Its size suggests a creature left behind by another age. The alligator tooth talisman made from its part slows the drain of Deadeye, linking patience under pressure to the predator that can wait almost without moving. In the swamp, speed is less frightening than stillness. The alligator snapping turtle lives near the same waters but carries danger in miniature. Its ridged shell and hooked mouth look severe, though it cannot chase Arthur with the authority of an alligator. It waits in muddy shallows, a heavy piece of the wetland floor. Turtles yield herptile meat rather than grand trophies. Their importance is visual and ecological. They make the swamp feel old at every scale, from the bullgator's massive body down to a shell half hidden beside a root. American bullfrogs and western toads inhabit warmer wet places, while the Sonoran desert toad waits in the dry southwest, near whatever water it can find. Frogs and toads are almost beneath notice until a hunting request or compendium gap makes their calls personal. Then every patch of mud becomes worth searching. A bullfrog jumps from the bank with a quick splash. A toad sits low enough to resemble a stone. Small game arrows are required for a perfect body, which gives the hunt a faint absurdity. An outlaw armed for bank robberies crouches in reeds, trying not to destroy a frog. Red swamp crayfish live at the line between bait and animal. They can be found in muddy ground and shallow water, small armoured scavengers whose name suits Lemoyne perfectly. Cuban land crabs appear chiefly on Guarma, though related island encounters bring that tropical life close to the broader compendium. Neither creature has the grandeur of an eagle or bear. Their inclusion says something better about the world's priorities. The wetland is not complete if attention stops at the animals large enough to attack a person. Muskrats weave through reeds while wild boars root through mud and forest. Boars are stocky, fast and willing to charge when cornered. Their range extends beyond Lemoyne into wooded country, but the swamp gives them their most natural stage. They can burst out of vegetation with almost no ceremony, turning a quiet search into a brief collision. Boar hides, tusks, fat and meat make them useful, while their broad distribution makes them one of the animals whose absence would be felt even if no one remembered seeing them often. The legendary boar occupies Blue Water Marsh, where pale colouring and larger size distinguish it from the ordinary herds. Its tusk contributes to a talisman that slows the drain of horse health and stamina cores. The benefit is a gentle surprise. A creature known for stubborn physical force leaves behind protection for the animal that carries Arthur. Legendary parts often work this way, translating a beast's imagined nature into a lasting change rather than preserving strict biology. Long-legged birds give Lemoyne much of its colour. Great blue herons and tricoloured herons hunt in shallow water, bodies balanced above narrow legs, necks folding and striking after fish. The reddish egret, little egret and snowy egret share that patient shoreline posture in different sizes and plumage. Their feathers become valuable during algernon wasps' requests, which turns beautiful birds into quantities on a shopping list. A white plume in a hat has a hidden origin, and the swamp is where that origin falls. The plume trade was historically devastating to many wading birds, especially during the fashion craze for feathered hats around the turn of the century. RDR2 places its exotic requests in that uncomfortable period. Algernon is charming, theatrical, and easy to indulge, while the work he requests requires repeated killing. The game never needs him to become a villain. The piles of feathers say enough. Luxury in Saint Denis begins with blood in the marsh. Roseate spoonbills are even harder to mistake. Their pink bodies and flat spoon-shaped bills turn a flock into a patch of colour moving through grey-green water. They sweep their bills side to side while feeding, a motion unlike the stabbing patience of a heron. Whooping cranes and sandhill cranes stand taller and carry their own calls across marsh and grassland. The whooping crane's pale body is particularly striking, while the sandhill crane wears subtler grey. Each bird gives the shallows a different rhythm. Pelicans bring heavier flight to coasts and large waterways. The American white pelican is broad and pale. The brown pelican is darker and associated with coastal water. They do not have the fragile elegance of egrets. They look built to carry an oversized bill through the air, then settle heavily near fish. Double-crested cormorants and neotropic cormorants share the waterways with slimmer bodies and darker plumage. Cormorants dive, disappear, and return somewhere else, making a still river briefly impossible to read. Gulls gather where water meets human waste and open shore. Herring gulls, laughing gulls, and ring-billed gulls circle Flatiron Lake, docks and coastlines. Their differences hide inside familiar grey and white forms, size, bill markings, head colour, and call. The laughing gull earns its name from a cry that can sound almost human at a distance. Around a port, that voice joins bells, ropes, water, and machinery until animal and city noise become one sound. Ducks and geese turn open water into roots. Mallards are wild and widespread. Pekin ducks remain tied more closely to farms. Canada geese appear both overhead and on the ground, their formation suggesting an order no rider can interrupt. Loons prefer quieter lakes, cormorants dive, pelicans scoop, and herons wait. By giving each bird a different relationship with water, the game avoids the feeling that one generic behaviour has been copied across wings. Snakes create the opposite impression because their first shared trait is alarm. A rattle, hiss, or red mark near the horse's feet can make species identification feel unimportant. Yet the compendium is precise. Diamondback, black-tailed, and timber rattlesnakes occupy different climates. Northern and southern copperheads divide warmer eastern ground. Midland and northern water snakes live near rivers and wetlands. Cottonmouth snakes belong in the swamp, their name recalling the pale interior of a defensive mouth. The diamondback rattlesnake favours arid New Austin and is the heavy desert emblem people expect. The black-tailed rattlesnake also belongs to the southwest, marked by the dark section near its rattle. Timber rattlesnakes are more at home in forest and rocky eastern or northern country. The sound comes before the pattern. A horse hears danger near the ground and shies, while Arthur may need Eagle Eye simply to find the coiled body among grass. Copperheads rely more on camouflage than warning. The northern copperhead ranges through wooded country, the southern copperhead belongs lower and warmer. Their hourglass markings disappear among leaves and mud. Water snakes add another layer of confusion because the non-venomous looking body in a river can resemble more dangerous company at a glance. The Midland water snake and northern water snake swim with their heads above the surface, turning a calm crossing into a small line of movement. Cottonmouths suit the bayou's reputation. They are venomous, semi-aquatic, and easily folded into stories of swamp danger. In the game, snakebite may poison Arthur, though a ginseng remedy or time can help. The encounter is rarely dramatic on the scale of a bear attack. It is a small mistake with a lingering cost, which is exactly why snakes belong in grass and reeds. They make careless footsteps matter. Florida panthers and ordinary panthers wait in southern forest, particularly around the dense woods near Braithwaite Land and Old Harry Fen. The compendium treats them as two entries, though both are forms of cougar in broader zoological terms. In play, their difference matters less than their shared ability to erase distance. A panther in thick brush is among the hardest animals to study alive. By the time the body is visible, it may already be attacking. The forest does not advertise them. There may be a boar, a deer, and the ordinary sounds of birds, then a sudden feline cry that makes every other sound irrelevant. Predator bait can draw a panther, but bait also turns waiting into a nervous admission that the hunter wants something dangerous to arrive. A strong rifle and elevated position help. So does knowing that the cat may approach from the side the camera is not watching. Jaguaro is the legendary panther in the final Master Hunter challenge. It does not appear merely because Arthur reaches the right forest. He must complete the earlier tests, proving skill across species before the game allows this last predator to hunt him back. The name, dark coat and hidden territory give the animal a folklore separate from the other legendary beasts. Jaguaro is less a prize waiting on the map than an examination administered by the woods. Its eye becomes a trinket that reduces dead eye drain for the first moments after activation. The effect fits an animal that decides everything in the opening instant of an attack. Yet the greater reward is survival. A hunter who has spent hours learning every weapon can still be dragged from certainty by one black shape in brush. Mastery in this world never means the wilderness has agreed to become harmless. Water Below the Birds holds a second compendium, 30 entries formed from 15 ordinary fish and their legendary counterparts. Fishing begins gently with Jack Marston near Horseshoe Overlook. Arthur takes a buoy to the river, baits a hook, and enters a rhythm almost opposite to gunfire. Cast, wait, feel the line, reel without breaking it, and let the fish tire. The scene eventually brings the Pinkertons, but before they arrive it gives Arthur one of his simplest roles, keeping a child company beside water. Bluegill are often the first fish to make that rhythm easy. Small, common and found in lakes and rivers, they take ordinary bait without turning the rod into a battle. Rock bass and perch live in similarly accessible water, modest catches suited to cooking or baiting larger ambitions. Chain pickerel and redfin pickerel are slender, toothy fish, with the chain pickerel generally larger and more widespread, while the redfin occupies its own warmer waters. These small species teach the feel of a bite. Smallmouth bass and largemouth bass divide around habitat and body shape. Smallmouth bass prefer clearer, cooler rivers and northern lakes. Largemouth bass favour warmer, slower water in the south. Steelhead trout belong to moving water, especially in the northeast, while sockeye salmon are associated with colder northern rivers. Catching a salmon in icy country feels different from pulling a bass out of Lemoyne, even if the same hands hold the rod. The fish make climate tangible beneath the surface. Bullhead catfish are smaller bottom feeders found in swampier water. The channel catfish is larger, and carries a mystery at the edge of the legendary fish quest. Long-nosed gar look almost prehistoric, long-snouted bodies suited to the bayou. Lake sturgeon are heavy fish found in southern lakes and rivers, their armoured lineage giving them a similarly ancient appearance. These are fish that make muddy water feel populated by more than reflections. Muskies and northern pike are among the strongest ordinary catches, long predators that fight hard against the line. A large muskie can pull Arthur along the bank if technique gives way to impatience. Northern pike suit colder rivers and lakes. The fishing system makes strength into duration rather than gunfire. A great fish is not killed by a larger bullet. It is brought closer a little at a time while the reel complains. Long-nosed gar, pike, muskie, bass, pickerel, trout, salmon, sturgeon, catfish, perch, bluegill and rock bass complete a submerged map. Bait and lure choices reveal diet. Bread, corn, cheese, worms, crayfish, crickets, lake lures, river lures, and swamp lures ask Arthur to understand water by what will rise from it. A river that appears visually empty becomes legible through ripples, splashes, and the shape pulled from below. Jeremy Gill turns fishing into performance. He is a celebrated angler in his own telling, dressed for publicity and eager to attach his name to catches made by someone else. He gives Arthur a map and asks him to send legendary fish by mail. The arrangement is funny because the fish are real challengers while Gill's fame is mostly language. Arthur does the lonely work at remote water. Gill prepares the story that will be told about it. Legendary fish are not different species so much as singular, exaggerated examples. There is a legendary bluegill near Flatiron Lake, connected to a quiet fishing trip with Kieran. Legendary chain and redfin pickerel wait in other waters. Legendary rock bass, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, perch, steelhead trout, sockeye salmon, lake sturgeon, bullhead catfish, long-nosed gar, muskie and northern pike each turn a familiar kind into a named destination. The repetition is ecological rather than mechanical. Every watershed is allowed one impossible resident. Special lures replace ordinary bait once the legendary search begins. The goal is no longer food. Arthur catches these fish to complete a map, satisfy a stranger, and test himself against water. He mails bodies too large for envelopes from railway stations where clerks accept the absurdity without comment. The frontier's postal system carries dripping legends toward a man who wants a photograph. The legendary channel catfish is the unsettling exception. Gill speaks of it as the final giant, and later travels with John to Rio Bravo, where he attempts the catch himself. The fish pulls him into the water. John never lands it, and the compendium entry remains an odd promise rather than an ordinary completed catch. Files and models have encouraged years of speculation, but within the finished story its absence is the point. The greatest fish belongs to the tale a fisherman could not survive proving. Fishing also gives water a life beyond extraction. Schools can be seen in clear shallows, eagles and bears may take fish, cormorants dive after them. A dead fish can wash into another animal's meal. Ripples reveal movement that Arthur did not create. The rod slows him enough to notice all this. Hunting usually requires movement toward an animal. Fishing asks him to remain still and trust that another world will touch the line. Along the Kamassa River and into Blue Water Marsh, the borders between species blur into food chains. A frog eats insects. A snake takes a frog. A heron strikes at fish. An alligator can seize almost anything careless enough to approach. Boars root near crayfish and plants. Vultures wait for what dies. The simulation cannot reproduce a real wetland in full, but it creates enough linked behaviour that the swamp feels busy even when Arthur stands still. Nightfolk make the bayou terrifying in human terms, yet animals establish the fear before any ambush. A horse refuses a patch of water. Frogs stop, or seem to stop. An alligator's eyes catch faint light. An owl calls from somewhere beyond the visible trees. The marsh trains attention towards sound, and then people who make almost none enter the same space. Nature does not cause the horror. It teaches the senses that the horror later uses. St. Denis rises beside this wetland as if trying to deny it. The city has paved streets, streetcars, factories, markets, and imported fashion. But animals remain everywhere. Horses pull carriages, pigeons settle on roofs, rats occupy alleys, dogs weave among pedestrians. Fish arrive at stalls, birds become feathers, livestock becomes meat, and the swamp's bodies are converted into hats and gloves. The city does not end nature. It reorganises nature into labour and products. From the docks, gulls and cormorants look ordinary against ships, while brown pelicans make the industrial river seem coastal. Smoke hangs above water that still supports gar and sturgeon. The contrast is not clean. St. Denis depends on the river it soils, just as its wealth depends on animal materials stripped of their origins. A plume appears elegant under gaslight, because the muddy place where it was taken has been kept out of the room. North of the city, the Carolina parakeet carries the most final animal story in the game. It is a small green bird with a bright head, native to the eastern United States and already disappearing by 1899. Flocks can be found in the Lemoyne wetlands, where their green bodies vanish against grass until they suddenly rise together. Studying one is difficult. Killing one is easy once the flock is exposed, and that difference becomes the whole tragedy. The first kill opens a hidden task that identifies the Carolina parakeet as endangered. After 15 are killed, the population is described as dwindling and the birds become harder to find. After 25, the species is declared wiped from the face of the earth and no more appear in that world. The task offers no meaningful reward. It does not need one. It places extinction inside completionist desire and asks how far a person will go simply because an empty box exists. The real Carolina parakeet survived a little longer. The last confirmed wild bird was seen in the early 20th century, and the last captive individual, Incus, died at the Cincinnati Zoo in 1918. Habitat destruction, persecution as a crop pest, hunting for feathers, collection, and other pressures likely contributed to the extinction. RDR2 compresses that long human loss into a single flock counter. The result is historically blunt and emotionally exact. Each shot makes the next sighting rarer. Unlike ordinary populations, the parakeets do not quietly refill after enough time away. The silence is permanent. It reveals how respawning usually protects people from understanding abundance. Deer return. Ducks return. Wolves return. The game bends nature so that its world remains playable, then briefly removes that protection for one vanished species. A wetland that once held green wings never holds them again. The bayou has given us the animal world at its most crowded and its most vulnerable. Predators older than roads, birds turned into fashion, fish turned into legend, and one flock that can be erased through persistence. Westward, the water thins. Mud hardens into pale dirt. Reeds give way to cactus, and the small sounds near Arthur's boots become rattles, claws, and the scratch of scales across stone. New Austin is held back for most of Arthur's journey. The law around Blackwater makes its roads almost impossible for him to travel honestly, so the desert's animals belong mainly to John and the epilogue. That separation gives them the mood of a later world. Years have passed, the gang is gone, yet Rio Bravo and Cholla Springs are full of species that were always living beyond the red boundary, indifferent to the fact that the story had not allowed us to reach them. The nine-banded armadillo is the desert's most recognizable small mammal. Its shell is made from bony plates covered in keratin, flexible enough for movement even though the body looks armored. The animal keeps its snout near the ground and moves with quick, practical purpose through scrub. Armadillo the Sick Town borrows its name from this creature, but the animal often looks healthier than the streets. One is adapted to a hard environment, the other has been abandoned to disease. Banded Gila monsters bring heavier colour to the ground, black and orange bodies moving slowly among rocks. They are venomous lizards, though they do not pursue a rider the way a predator might. Their danger depends on being handled or stepped near, which suits the desert's habit of placing consequence close to the soil. The game calls the animal a banded Gila monster and locates it in New Austin, where sunlight makes its bead-like scales visible from just far enough away to study. Desert iguanas are paler, faster, and built for open heat. Green iguanas belong to the tropical interruption of Guam and a few islands off Lemoyne, where warm vegetation supports them. The two species let the same general lizard shape reflect different climates. One disappears against sand and stone, the other carries the greener colour of humid growth. Iguana skin also has a practical afterlife in crafting, which sends many hunters rowing toward islands they would otherwise ignore. The collared peccary resembles a small wild pig, but it belongs to a different family and carries a pale collar across the shoulders. Peccaries travel the scrublands of New Austin in groups, rooting and moving through cactus country. Calling one a pig is understandable at a glance, yet the compendium preserves the distinction. Their presence gives the desert its own answer to Lemoyne's boars. Similar ecological work, different body, different continent spanning history. Black-tailed jackrabbits stretch across much of the western map, but in New Austin their long ears and bounding stride look completely at home. California quail run through scrub before bursting into short flight. Rio Grande wild turkeys replace their eastern relatives, carrying the same large ground bird shape into a drier climate. Western turkey vultures circle above them all, waiting for heat and death to lift them. The desert does not need dense vegetation to be crowded. It hides life in distance rather than leaves. The Sonoran pronghorn buck and Sonoran pronghorn doe make one regional pair across the southwest, while the Baja California pronghorn buck and Baja California pronghorn doe make another. Bucks carry the dark horns and stronger facial markings, does are lighter and unarmed. Their names borrow real geography, even though the game's map compresses states and ecosystems into fictional borders. Watching a group race across Hennigan's Stead gives the open ground a purpose. It is wide because these animals require width. Desert bighorn rams and sheep occupy cliffs that look too dry to feed anything. Their hooves find roots among ledges, and their muted coats blend with rock. A rider may see the horns before the body. The Sierra Nevada fawns favour the west beyond the desert, while Rocky Mountain bighorns remain tied to colder heights. Across all three regional pairs, sex and habitat become enough to create 6 compendium entries from one recognisable family. The detail could feel excessive on a list. In the land, it feels like adaptation. The legendary pronghorn lives near Rio del Lobo Rock. Its white coat makes it almost luminous against New Austin, and its horn becomes a trinket that prevents animal carcasses stored on the horse from spoiling. That benefit answers a practical problem unique to hunters travelling long distances in heat. A desert animal leaves behind protection against decay, as though its ability to live under the sun has passed into everything John carries. The legendary Tatanka bison grazes near Manteca Falls, darker than the legendary white bison, and separated from the ordinary herds of the heartlands. The name Tatanka comes from Lakota, often translated as bison or buffalo bull, giving the animal's title a cultural connection missing from a generic label. Its horn becomes a trinket that reduces incoming melee damage. The bison's mass becomes human resilience, another piece of frontier folklore turned into a quiet mechanical advantage. New Austin's legendary cougar waits farther west, completing the 3 legendary hunts locked naturally behind the story's geography. Together, pronghorn, bison and cougar reflect the desert's basic arrangement: prey built for distance, a herd animal built for endurance, and a solitary predator built for surprise. John reaches them after he has tried to become a rancher, which gives every hunt a faint return to the life he claimed he was leaving. The desert also holds both bold and golden eagles, ferruginous hawks, condors, ravens and several sparrows, but the sky feels different because there are fewer branches to interrupt it. A bird can remain visible for a long time. On the ground, rattlesnakes, toads, armadillos, lizards and peccaries ask for the opposite attention. New Austin divides awareness between the widest horizon and the nearest step. There are creatures in the compendium that New Austin cannot provide because the story carries Arthur much farther away. Guarma is brief, hot and disorienting. The gang reaches it by accident after the St. Denis Bank disaster, without familiar horses, weapons, camps or freedom. Its animals help sell that rupture immediately. The birds are too bright, the snakes have unfamiliar patterns, even the air seems crowded with life from another story. 3 macaws live there: the blue and yellow macaw, great green macaw, and scarlet macaw. Their colours are not slight variations. Blue and gold cross the first bird's body, green dominates the second, scarlet red makes the third seem almost impossible against sky. Macaws fly high enough to be difficult to study and easy to lose. They are also missable in the ordinary course of the story, because Guarma cannot be revisited through normal travel after the chapter ends. The red-footed booby adds a seabird to the island's canopy of colour. Its name comes from the feet, while the body is adapted to ocean feeding and long flight. The Cuban land crab moves below, another Guarma species easy to overlook while gunfire and rebellion occupy the plot. Green iguanas bask near ruins and vegetation. Together these animals make the island more than a temporary combat map. They imply an ecosystem that existed before the shipwrecked outlaws arrived and continues after they escape. Guarma's snakes include red, rainbow and sunglow boas. These are colour variations given separate compendium entries, each winding through vegetation where visibility is poor. Boas kill by constriction rather than venom, but the practical danger in the game is often less important than the difficulty of finding and studying them. The body forms a patterned line among roots and leaves. One movement can disappear into another. The fer-de-lance snake is the island's venomous snake and perhaps its most notorious reptile. Its broad head and reputation make a close encounter feel appropriately foreign after hours spent learning North American rattlers and copperheads. Arthur has crossed an ocean, and the compendium proves it through zoology. A new landscape is not merely a new colour palette. It contains dangers evolved under different conditions. Because Guama's animals are not required for the main wildlife achievements, missing them does not close the larger path to completion. That decision is merciful. The chapter is narratively urgent and geographically temporary, forcing every person to stop the rebellion and search tree branches for a sunglow boa would distort the story. Still, the entries remain for anyone patient enough to look. Optional knowledge suits animals better than compulsory collection. Guama also sharpens the difference between observation and possession. Arthur cannot build a lasting camp there, keep a horse, or settle into hunting routines. He is a passing disturbance. The macaws do not become part of Pearson's stew or the trapper's wardrobe. They remain glimpses. After returning to America, their bright pages in the journal feel like proof of a place that the main map cannot reach. Back on the mainland, legendary animals turn familiar species into a second geography drawn over the first. Hosea's map shows sketches rather than exact roads. Entering a territory brings a quiet notice. Then the search moves through physical clues: fur caught on bark, dung, a torn carcass, broken sticks, disturbed ground. Eagle Eye pulls a golden thread from one sign to the next. The animal itself remains absent until enough evidence is gathered. This structure slows hunting into reading. Arthur does not arrive at an icon and immediately fire. He reconstructs recent movement. The clues vary enough to suggest the creature's habits and size, and the final approach creates a pocket of suspense inside ordinary country. A forest Arthur has crossed many times becomes the legendary Buck's Forest. A river bend becomes the Beavers. Familiar land acquires a secret name. The legendary buck lives in Big Valley near the western edge of the map. Its pale piebald-like coat and great antlers distinguish it from ordinary whitetails. More than any other legendary reward, the buck antler trinket changes future hunting by improving the chance that a pelt remains high quality after a less than perfect shot. The first great deer can therefore make every later deer more forgiving. It is a generous inheritance from an animal killed cleanly or otherwise. Near Mattock Pond in Lemoyne, the legendary fox waits with a bright coat that catches light against darker ground. Foxes already seem clever because they hunt beneath snow and avoid direct confrontation. The legendary version turns that reputation into a longer eagle-eye duration through its claw trinket. The connection is almost storybook logic. The fox lends the hunter more time to notice hidden trails. The legendary coyote ranges near Scarlet Meadows, darker and larger than the common California Valley coyote. Its fang increases dead-eye experience, so an animal associated with cautious distance improves the skill built around controlled focus. The coyote hunt is often quieter than the bear or panther. That suits it. Coyotes survive at the edge of attention, adapting to spaces between larger predators and expanding settlements. The legendary elk appears east of Bacchus Station, a pale bull whose antlers rise above Cumberland Forest. Its antler trinket increases money found through looting, an effect less directly tied to elk behaviour than some others, though the object itself preserves the old association between antler and abundance. The hunt also places a grand herbivore near railway construction. Ancient migration and industrial movement occupy the same narrow country. The legendary moose waits near Brandywine Drop in the far northeast. Ordinary moose are elusive enough to feel legendary already, so the marked one amplifies scarcity rather than inventing it. Its antler trinket increases health experience. The animal's immense body and solitary life make that association easy to accept. Finding it among waterfalls and remote woods feels less like chasing prey than reaching the end of a long northern pilgrimage. At Ackertail Pond, the legendary bighorn ram carries broad pale horns through rocky country. Its horn trinket doubles the amount of creeping thyme, oregano, and wild mint gathered, connecting the mountain grazer to the herbs it would know. This is one of the most graceful legendary effects. The reward does not make Arthur stronger through violence directly. It makes the land more generous when he bends to pick something. The legendary white bison lives near Lake Isabella, where its coat almost disappears against snow. Hunting it requires cold weather clothing and a journey into country that empties the cores before the animal is even found. Its horn talisman slows stamina core drain. The reward feels earned through climate as much as combat. The bison's ability to stand in brutal cold becomes endurance carried away from the mountain. North of Katora Springs, the legendary wolf moves among geothermal pools and pale mineral ground. Steam, coloured water, and open rock make the territory feel strange before the animal appears. The wolf heart trinket allows Arthur to drink more alcohol before becoming drunk, a wry translation of toughness rather than a natural connection. Yet the hunt itself preserves the serious mood of a pack predator encountered alone, made singular by legend. Legendary status alters appearance and scale, but it does not give these animals magical attacks. They remain recognizable versions of buck, fox, coyote, elk, moose, ram, bison, wolf, bear, beaver, boar, cougar, pronghorn, panther, and alligator. That restraint keeps the frontier myth grounded. People exaggerate animals they barely survive. A huge paw print becomes a story. A pale coat glimpsed in snow becomes a ghost. The game lets local folklore grow from biology rather than replace it. Their pelts go to the trapper, who treats rarity as material. He transforms them into hats, coats, gloves, chaps and boots, allowing Arthur to wear the visible proof of a hunt. Other parts go to a fence for trinkets and talismans. The split is revealing. Hide becomes public appearance. Tooth, claw, horn, antler, fang, and eye become private power. One tells strangers what Arthur killed, the other changes what he can endure. No legendary pelt is truly lost if abandoned or dropped. The trapper eventually receives the material even when Arthur fails to carry it there, though he loses the sale price. This protection prevents a singular animal from being wasted by a horse accident or bad route. Ordinary carcasses receive no such mercy. Their fragility is part of daily hunting. Legend receives a safeguard because it cannot respawn. The Master Hunter path links ordinary and legendary animals through skill. It asks for clean kills, skinning, bait, predator hunts, mounted hunting, fish caught without a rod, and a possum caught in its performance, and finally jaguaro. The sequence can feel like a checklist if rushed, but taken slowly it teaches different relationships with wildlife. Arthur must understand size, tool, behaviour and terrain. The final panther tests whether knowledge remains useful when fear arrives quickly. Other challenges focus on weapons rather than species. Small game arrows ask for flight feathers and shotgun shells broken down into a more delicate purpose. Improved arrows turn the bow toward large animals. Poison arrows can stop a powerful creature while preserving hide, though the waiting animal may suffer. The bow itself makes hunting quieter, but quiet does not always mean kinder. Every method carries a different compromise among efficiency, pelt quality, and pain. Scent cover lotion and bait translate animal senses into preparation. Herbivore bait draws deer, pronghorn, elk, bison, sheep, and other plant eaters. Predator bait invites foxes, coyotes, wolves, bears, cougars, and panthers, sometimes with more success than the hunter wanted. Potent versions reach farther. Cover scent reduces the chance that Arthur's smell warns an animal. The systems acknowledge that wildlife experiences the world through more than human sight. Wind, however, is simplified. Real hunting depends heavily on direction, shifting scent, animal hearing, seasonal movement, and countless local conditions. The game compresses those variables into readable tools, because complete realism would be exhausting. Its success comes from choosing which truths create feeling. Tracks in mud matter. The wrong gun ruins a pelt. A wounded deer suffers. The simulation is selective, yet the selected details consistently point toward attention. The compendium completes that lesson by giving Arthur handwritten knowledge rather than a sterile database. His sketches vary from rough observation to remarkably tender studies. Antlers, wings, paws, and profiles enter the same journal that holds gang plans, doubts about Dutch, memories of Mary, and fear of death. Animals are part of Arthur's inner life because drawing them requires him to look without immediately acting. High honour makes that quiet observer feel closer to the Arthur revealed near the end. He can still hunt and kill, but the journal suggests he is capable of noticing more than usefulness. He sees beauty, strangeness, and humour. A bird is not only feathers, a moose is not only antler. The pages preserve the animal before the inventory breaks it into parts. John's drawings are rougher, which creates one of the compendium's most human changes. When he completes entries Arthur never saw, the artwork shifts in style. The species remains the same, the hand holding the pencil is different. The animal ledger therefore carries the story across death. A page about a pronghorn in New Austin can quietly reveal that Arthur did not live to draw it. By the time every legendary territory has been crossed, the map no longer looks like empty land between towns. It is a patchwork of ranges: bear country, cougar country, bison ground, heron marsh, rattlesnake desert, loon lake, sparrow woods. Human names remain printed in large letters, but animal knowledge creates another set beneath them. The world becomes less owned and more inhabited. The formal names in Arthur's ledger preserve distinctions that casual speech would erase. An American pronghorn doe is not interchangeable with the Sonoran or Baja California doe found farther west. A Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep belongs to a different range than a desert bighorn sheep or Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep. Even birds that flash past in a second receive full names: scarlet tanager songbird, golden crowned sparrow, and eastern turkey vulture. The wording can sound overly careful until the country changes and those labels begin predicting colour, climate, and location. But care reaches creatures most people describe with a single broad word. The northern and southern copperheads are formally recorded as the northern copperhead snake and southern copperhead snake. Guama's red boa snake, rainbow boa snake, and sunglow boa snake are not collapsed into one exotic serpent. Ranch yards separate the Berkshire pig, big China pig, and old spot pig. Coops separate the Dominique chicken from the Dominique rooster. Then do the same for the Java chicken, Java rooster, Leghorn chicken, and Leghorn rooster. Classification does not make the animals more alive, but it proves someone expected us to look long enough to see difference. The legendary names also preserve the tone of local storytelling. The legendary bullgator sounds like something whispered around Largrass rather than a scientific specimen. The legendary bighorn ram belongs to a hunter's map. The legendary Giaguaro panther has a personal name and a reputation earned through challenge. These titles do not claim supernatural biology. They record the moment when an animal becomes famous among people who share its territory. Fame is exactly what Albert Mason wants for ordinary wildlife, though his approach is gentler than Jeremy Gill's. Mason is a travelling photographer trying to capture animals with a camera instead of a rifle. His enthusiasm exceeds his field sense. A coyote steals his bag. Wolves place him in danger. Wild horses refuse to arrange themselves for composition. Alligators turn a marsh assignment into a rescue. Arthur repeatedly becomes the practical force that lets Mason keep believing patience and equipment will be enough. Their encounters give wildlife a rare role outside hunting. Arthur herds horses into a photograph rather than a corral. He helps create images of wolves without reducing them to pelts. Mason's methods are clumsy, but his desire to preserve a living moment points toward a future relationship with nature. Photography can still disturb animals, and Mason often needs protection from the subjects he admires, yet the final object is an image. Nothing has to die for it to travel. One of Mason's photographs can later be found in Charles Chatenay's orbit in Saint Denis, a small sign that observation enters culture differently from trophies. The trapper turns a bear into clothing. Mason turns a herd into a picture. Arthur enables both processes. He is not given one pure identity as hunter or conservationist. He lives inside the contradiction common to the period, relying on animal bodies while becoming capable of seeing them as more than supply. Hamish Sinclair's life is similarly organised around animals without being reduced to collection. A huge northern pike pulls him into O'Cree's Run, and Arthur helps catch it. A she-wolf and her pack later draw the two men into a hunt. Finally, a monstrous boar becomes Hamish's last quarry. Fishing, wolf hunting, horse care and companionship braid together across the meetings. The animals provide danger, work, and a reason for two lonely men to spend time together. Buell remains after Hamish dies. The horse can pass into Arthur's care, carrying a relationship forward when the man who formed it is gone. If Arthur takes Buell into the final chapters, the horse may also die during the escape, bringing two losses into one body. If John completes the story later, Buell can live at Beecher's Hope. Neither path is announced as correct. The animal becomes a vessel for timing, and timing is rarely kind in this story. Margaret's travelling menagerie approaches animals through fraud. The supposed zebra is a mule painted with stripes. The supposed tiger is a cougar disguised for performance. The lion, after enough deception has trained everyone to expect another trick, turns out to be a real African lion. It does not appear in the main compendium because it is a singular imported animal, not part of the regional ecology. That exception is one of the funniest and most dangerous uses of wildlife in the game. A fake show accidentally contains the thing it claims. The lion's presence also hints at global animal trade. Exotic creatures were captured, transported, exhibited, and often mistreated for entertainment. Margaret's act is shabby, but the desire he exploits is real. People in frontier towns want to see an animal from beyond their world. Paint on a mule is enough until the cage opens and something truly foreign roars. The encounter turns classification into survival, recognizing that this one is not another dressed cougar matters immediately. The escaped animals expose how thin captivity can be. Dogs used in the search become vulnerable. Livestock panic. A cougar that belongs to American wilderness has been forced into the role of an Asian tiger through paint and publicity. The lion has been carried across an ocean into a barn. Margaret speaks of wonder, but the animals experience confusion, cages, and commands. Entertainment rearranges nature for a paying crowd, then blames nature when it refuses the arrangement. Wildlife appears in quieter human stories too. Charlotte Balfour must learn to hunt after her husband's death leaves her alone at Willard's Rest. Arthur teaches her to handle a rifle and secure food. The lesson is practical, but it also reveals how much survival knowledge civilization had allowed others to avoid. The rabbit becomes the difference between helpless grief and the beginning of independence. Hunting here is neither sport nor wardrobe. It is the oldest promise of food. Pearson keeps that promise for the gang. Meat donated at camp enters the stew, while hides and carcasses become funds or crafting materials. His table turns hunting into communal care. A deer carried home is not simply sold. It feeds people who may never ask how long Arthur waited in the grass. Upgrading camp through perfect pelts extends that labour into satchels, rugs, covers and tools. Animal bodies become the soft surfaces of outlaw domestic life. The recipes ask for specific quality and species which can turn necessity into obsession. A perfect cougar pelt, perfect wolf pelt, perfect elk skin, badger pelt, squirrel pelt, and many other materials stand between Arthur and a complete set of camp improvements. The hunt begins with an object in mind, but hours spent searching often produce unrelated encounters. A person riding for a badger finds an owl, watches two bucks fight, hears a distant bear, and returns after sunrise with no badger at all. Failure becomes a tour of everything else alive. The trapper expands that material world far beyond camp. He accepts hides from common and legendary animals, then makes garments whose combinations can be severe, beautiful, or gloriously strange. Beaver, fox, wolf, bear, ram, moose, boar, cougar, panther, bison, coyote, alligator, snake, sheep, goat, cow, pig, deer, elk and pronghorn all enter his catalogue. Wearing the result across St. Denier turns distant habitats into clothing on one body. Butchers provide the plain economic route. A carcass loses value as it decays, and one stored on a horse is limited by size. Small animals can hang from the saddle, large skins lie across the back. An unskinned deer or pronghorn occupies the heavy central space. The arrangement changes the horse's silhouette into a record of the day. Riding into town after a successful hunt announces where Arthur has been before he says a word. Animal fat becomes especially valuable for ammunition and explosives. Feathers become arrows and decorative materials. Scent glands enter bait and crafting. Antlers, claws, teeth, horns, tusks and scales become trinkets or talismans. Meat divides into game. Big game, venison, mutton, pork, beef, plump bird, gamey bird, gritty fish, flaky fish, succulent fish, stringy meat and herptile meat. The categories sound culinary because survival is partly a matter of knowing what body is in the pan. Seasoning with mint, oregano or thyme improves different cores, so an animal's usefulness joins the plant world. Big game meat from predators becomes one of the strongest meals when seasoned. A wolf may hunt deer, Arthur hunts the wolf, herbs alter the meat, the meal helps him survive another predator. The food chain does not end at human consumption. It becomes stamina for the next journey into it. Cooking animations insist on time. Meat is held over flame, turned and stored or eaten. The act is simple, yet it prevents hunting from ending at the shot. Something must be carried, prepared and consumed. Camp smoke, a sizzling piece of venison, and a horse resting nearby create a domestic image from wilderness and violence. The comfort is real. So is its cost. The honour system reacts selectively. Ordinary hunting for food does not make Arthur dishonourable, and clean kills are treated as legitimate frontier work. Waste, cruelty and the extinction of parakeets carry a different tone. Shooting farm animals can become theft or vandalism. Killing dogs and cats feels especially ugly because the world has taught us to greet them. Morality is not reduced to a universal ban on harm. It depends on need, method, ownership, and the relationship the animal has been given. Those relationships can be manipulated. A hostile dog may be used by bounty hunters or guards. Wolves are framed as threats during rescues. Cougars and bears become challenges. Yet the game repeatedly offers scenes where the same species exists without attacking. A wolf can play, a bear can rub against a tree, a cougar can pass in the distance before noticing Arthur. Aggression is only one behaviour, though gunfire naturally makes it the behaviour most often remembered. Bucks and rams may spar over territory or status. Birds bathe in shallow water. Foxes pounce into snow. Eagles take snakes or fish. Bears can catch salmon and compete around carcasses. Wolves chase deer, and scavengers gather after the chase. Some interactions are authored routines, others emerge when separate systems meet. The distinction matters less in the moment than the feeling that the animals have reasons for moving unrelated to Arthur. Emergence creates stories no writer could place exactly. A bear pursuing prey may encounter a wolf. An eagle may lift an animal Arthur was studying. A predator may follow the smell of a carcass intended as bait for something else. A horse may panic at a snake during an ambush and throw its rider behind cover by accident. The wildlife systems do not need infinite complexity. They need enough independence to collide. That independence helped the game teach real zoology. A study published a few years after release compared people who had played Red Dead Redemption 2 with other participants. Those familiar with the game could identify more real animal species on average, and often describe behaviours they had learned by watching the virtual world. Bears bluff charging, opossums feigning death, and foxes diving into snow were among the memorable examples. The map had become an accidental field guide. The same research found limits and mistakes, as any compressed simulation must have. Wolves in the game attack humans more readily than real wolves usually do. Species ranges are condensed to fit a map crossed in minutes. Population recovery serves playability. Animal behaviour is selected for visibility, drama, and function. Education happens not because the game is a perfect model, but because it makes people curious enough to look up what they saw. That curiosity begins with sound as often as sight. Elk bugle across valleys. Loons call over lakes. Coyotes make the plains feel distant. Owls occupy night. Rattlesnakes create immediate attention at ground level. Songbirds mark dawn with a density that changes by habitat. Even without binoculars, the world tells Arthur what kind of country he has entered. Closing the eyes does not empty the map. Sound also protects performance. An animal can exist beyond rendering distance as a call, keeping the forest wider than the visible screen. A cougar's cry creates a predator before the body appears. Wings exploding from brush turn hidden birds into sudden motion. The roar of a grizzly fills space that one model alone could not. Good animal sound gives every creature territory larger than itself. Animation carries the closer details. Horses shift weight, flick ears, lower their heads to graze, defecate, roll, rear, stumble, and recover. Deer bend to feed and snap upright at alarm. Birds take off according to body size rather than sharing one generic launch. Alligators push from land into water with heavy momentum. Snakes coil and strike. The more familiar an animal is, the less room there is for false movement, which makes the ordinary farmyard as demanding as the legendary hunt. Rockstar's animal systems grew from earlier work in Grand Theft Auto V and the first Red Dead Redemption, then expanded for a world where hunting was central. Developers had to balance believable routines with performance across a vast map. Animals needed to exist near roads without causing constant chaos, flee without vanishing nonsensically, and respond to predators, weather, terrain, gunfire, carcasses, bait, and people. The result is not an untouched wilderness simulator. It is a carefully staged ecology with enough freedom to surprise its makers. Horses required special attention because they must cooperate with terrain and human animation every minute. Mounting from different angles, climbing slopes, avoiding obstacles, pulling wagons, swimming, falling, and carrying bodies all join emotional behaviour such as fear and bonding. The rider and horse are separate characters sharing one movement system. When it works, the seam disappears. Arthur seems to ride rather than control a vehicle wearing skin. Predators reveal the seams more often because they must challenge a heavily armed person. Wolves approach too boldly. Cougars spawn close enough to force action. Bears sometimes choose combat when a real animal might leave. These exaggerations are part of the Western adventure, but the game surrounds them with quieter behaviour so that danger does not define the whole species. A grizzly that turns away can be more memorable than one that attacks. Prey animals face the opposite problem. If deer and pronghorn always fled at realistic distance, many would be tiny shapes on the horizon. The game lets hunters get close enough to study, track and shoot while still making wind. Cover, sound and approach matter. Their alert animations provide readable stages, relaxed feeding, uncertain attention, full alarm and flight. A clean hunt depends on recognizing the moment before the last stage. The 3-star quality system gives the population visible inequality. Some animals are already in poor condition before Arthur touches them. Others carry perfect hides. This creates selection, though not true genetics or age structure. The hunter searches for an exceptional individual among ordinary ones, and the binoculars become as useful as the rifle. Passing up a poor buck is a form of restraint created by economics rather than compassion, but restraint still changes behaviour. Legendary animals invert that system. Their hides are always perfect, and any weapon can preserve them. The careful question changes from how to avoid damage to how to survive. This distinction keeps legendary encounters from punishing a person for defending himself with the wrong gun. The mythic animal is too singular to become a ruined pelt through one frightened shotgun blast. Wildlife achievements create another inversion. Total completion asks for only a portion of the 178 animal entries, while deeper awards encourage much wider study and skinning. Guama species, the Carolina parakeet, and certain special animals are exempt from the most demanding requirements, preventing missed chapters and extinction from permanently closing them. The game rewards obsession, but stops short of requiring every possible cruelty. Miss L. Hobbs's hunting requests test obsession in a smaller, stranger way. Perfect rabbits, squirrels, rats, birds, frogs, and other compact creatures must be mailed as intact carcasses for a wildlife art exhibition. The requests turn the post office into a route between death and decoration. Later, John discovers the final sculpture, a comic arrangement of a squirrel dressed like a gunslinger. Abigail dislikes it. John can keep rescuing it after she hides it around Beecher's Hope, turning countless difficult hunts into a domestic joke. The squirrel statue is silly, but its journey completes a long transformation. A living squirrel becomes a perfect carcass, then a crafted imitation, then an object in a marital disagreement. Wildlife has been observed, killed, preserved, costumed, and placed on a mantle. The game seems aware of how absurd collection becomes when taken to its end. Completion produces not enlightenment, but a tiny armed squirrel that refuses to stay where John puts it. Extinct and impossible animals haunt the edges of the world beyond the compendium. Mammoth bones lie in the northern snow, a skeleton from a life far older than 1899. A massive serpent hangs dead in a tree in Lemoyne, unexplained and far larger than the ordinary snakes underfoot. Whale bones appear far from living ocean, creating questions about transport, ancient water, or simple strangeness. These remains do not count as living species, but they widen the timeline of animal life beyond what Arthur can study. Fossils collected for Deborah McGuinness push that timeline deeper. Her reconstruction and the later consequences of her work mix scientific ambition with the prejudices of the period. Dinosaur bones make the frontier feel temporary in a new way. Outlaws believe they are living at the end of an age, yet beneath them are creatures whose age ended beyond human memory. The bison's possible disappearance is tragic because people may cause it. The fossils show that disappearance is also part of the planet's oldest rhythm. The stuffed gorilla found in a crate offers another displaced animal, dead before Arthur encounters it and carried as an object. Like Margaret's lion and Saint Denis plumes, it points toward a global appetite for exotic bodies. Natural history museums, private collections, circuses and taxidermy often depended on removal. Wonder and possession travelled together. The game scatters that history through props, rather than building a lecture around it. Arthur's own dreams and visions use animals symbolically. High honour is associated with a buck, low honour with a coyote. These visions are not compendium encounters and should not be treated as literal wildlife, but their choice of species draws on everything the world has taught. The buck appears in soft light, watchful and calm. The coyote occupies darker ground as an adaptable scavenger associated with unease. Neither animal is morally good or evil in nature. Arthur supplies the meaning. That distinction matters. Coyotes are not corrupt because low honour borrows their image. Wolves are not villains because they attack John in the snow. Panthers are not malicious because they ambush. Animals act within hunger, fear, territory, and the demands of design. Human beings turn those actions into stories about courage and wickedness. The legendary map is one collection of such stories. Arthur's visions are another. The buck vision becomes especially moving because ordinary bucks have been present throughout his journey. He may have killed dozens, he may have watched them from horseback without thought. Near death, the familiar animal returns stripped of utility. There is no pelt quality, no rifle, no antler trinket. There is only recognition. The world he treated as material looks back at him. John inherits the animal world along with Arthur's weapons and journal. At Beecher's Hope, wild country becomes ranch labour. Cows need milking, horses need tending, hay needs moving, eggs need collecting, and Rufus waits near the family. John's redemption is often discussed through the house he builds, but that house survives through daily relations with animals. He is trying to replace theft with husbandry, taking responsibility for lives rather than taking from strangers. Ranching does not free him from violence. Livestock is property and food. Predators remain threats. The land itself was acquired inside a history of displacement. Still, routine changes John. Milking a cow and shoveling manure are deliberately humble tasks for a former gunman. Animals reduce heroism to care. A man who once crossed the border for revenge now wakes because the ranch must be fed. Jack's bond with Rufus adds affection without utility. The dog helps search, guards the property in his own way, and shares the family's space. But his emotional value is greater than his work. When Jack calls for him, the ranch sounds inhabited by a child rather than merely managed by adults. Rufus eventually disappears from the later chronology before the first Red Dead Redemption, another ordinary absence in a family marked by larger ones. Across the whole game, animals measure the pressure of modernity. Bison carcasses expose organised slaughter. Plume hunting connects marshes to urban fashion. Pollution touches fish and deer near industry. Trains strike wildlife and replace horse travel. Ranch fences divide migration routes. Exotic animals are shipped for entertainment. The year 1899 is not the end of nature, but it is a period when human systems have become powerful enough to alter nature at industrial speed. The game never pretends Arthur stands outside that pressure. He works for money, crafts from hides, eats meat, rides horses, and kills predators for challenge. Even a high honor life leaves a trail of bodies. His better quality is not purity, it is the growing ability to see consequence. Charles teaches him why abandoned bison matter. A wounded deer makes carelessness audible. The parakeets make repetition permanent. His journal turns seeing into memory. That may be why the animals remain so powerful after the story is known. Plot missions can become familiar. Dialogue can be anticipated. Wildlife refuses exact repetition. The same road may hold a fox one morning, a flock of turkeys the next, and a cougar after dark. Weather changes how each encounter begins. A horse's fear alters how it ends. The world keeps a small capacity to surprise, even when the tale of Dutch and Arthur has settled into memory. It also keeps proportion. Dutch can believe his latest plan is the centre of existence, while an elk herd crosses a ridge beyond camp. Cornwall can build railways and mines, yet bats occupy the shafts after workers leave. St. Denis can cover earth with paving stones, but pigeons reinterpret every roof as rock and rats take the spaces below. Human beings change the land violently, though they never become its only inhabitants. The animals make every claim of control look temporary. Arthur often understands this better when he is alone. Around camp he is an enforcer, debtor, gunman, and son trapped inside Dutch's story. On a hunting trail, identity becomes simpler. He is a body with a direction, trying to read another body through signs. The animal does not care about his reputation. A grizzly is not impressed by the Van der Linde gang. A deer does not know his honour. A horse trusts repeated treatment rather than speeches. Those relationships strip away the excuses people accept from one another. Perhaps that is why his thank you to the horse lands with such force. The animal has judged him only through presence, the steadiness of his hands, the food he offered, the danger he led it into, and the times he returned. There is no grand confession to make. Gratitude is enough. For a man whose human loyalties have become tangled in manipulation, one honest sentence to an animal feels almost clean. The game's title places redemption above everything, but animals do not redeem Arthur. They do not absolve the hunters who empty wetlands for plumes or excuse the lives taken for sport. They give him chances to practice attention. He can kill cleanly rather than carelessly. He can feed camp. He can stop the men wasting bison. He can pat a frightened horse. He can teach Charlotte to survive. None of these acts erases his crimes. They show that tenderness remained possible inside the man committing them. Charles carries the strongest moral clarity because he sees animals inside relationships older than commerce. The bison is food, material, memory, and kinship, not a decorative symbol floating above practical life. Respect does not mean refusing to use the animal. It means refusing waste and understanding dependence. That view differs from both industrial slaughter and romantic distance. Nature is neither warehouse nor untouched painting. It is the living system in which people have always been implicated. The Carolina parakeet offers the darkest answer to that implication. A person can admire the flock, study it, draw it, and still erase it through the same urge to complete everything. The game cannot make the bird return after declaring extinction without weakening the idea. So it accepts a permanent hole in its own simulation. One entry can be full while the sky becomes emptier. Knowledge and loss sit on the same completed page. The bison remain, though history makes their herds feel haunted. The legendary animals remain only until hunted. Guarma's macaws continue beyond Arthur's reach. Fish move under rivers that carry pollution from mines and cities. Wolves howl after the gang leaves Coulter. Rufus grows old at Beecher's Hope. Every animal has a different relation to human time. Some vanish in seconds. Some outlive the story. Some leave only bones. Taken together, the 178 animal entries, the 30 fish entries, and the 19 horse breeds do more than fill a compendium. They create a world where place can be recognised through life. Amberino is elk breath, wolf tracks, and an owl in cold trees. The heartlands are whitetails lifting their heads and bison darkening the grass. Big Valley is a moose across water and a bear at the forest edge. Lemoyne is an alligator mistaken for timber, a spoonbill opening pink wings, and a panther hidden in green. New Austin is a condor above red stone and an armadillo below it. Guarma is 3 macaws crossing a sky Arthur will never see again. Even the plainest animals carry part of that geography. A Florida cracker cow belongs near southern farms. The Siberian husky seems to carry winter in its coat. A coastal horned owl gives the wet east a night voice different from the Californian horned owl in the west. The red-tailed, ferruginous and rough-legged hawks divide open air by climate. Names become coordinates, and the compendium becomes a map written in bodies. Completion can never quite capture the movement that made those bodies worth finding. A filled entry records that Arthur studied, tracked, killed, skimmed, plucked, or collected an animal. It cannot preserve the fog over the lake, the horse's nervous step, or the moment a fox vanished into snow. The best encounters resist the ledger. Their value is in happening once. So the fullest way to know the animals may be to leave some of them alone. Watch a buck finish crossing the road. Let the eagle keep its fish. Follow the beaver's wake without raising a rifle. Stand far enough from a grizzly that both of you can make a sensible decision. The game provides rewards for killing, but it has done too much work on living behaviour for death to be the only interesting result. There is a patience in wildlife watching that matches the slower side of Arthur's life. It resembles brewing coffee at camp, brushing a horse, writing in the journal, or riding without using the fastest gait. These actions are not delays between important events. They are the texture that gives those events a world to interrupt. The gang's tragedy hurts because ordinary mornings existed around it, and many of those mornings began with birds. Now the route can bend back toward the beginning. New Austin fades into distance. The bright guama birds become a few coloured drawings. Lemoyne's water cools into river and lake. Fields rise toward mountain forest. Somewhere above the snow line, the air grows thin enough for breath to show again. Wolves move between pines, not yet aware that desperate people have entered their country. The gang will call Coulter abandoned. In human terms, it is. Cabins stand empty, roads have disappeared under snow, and the nearest town feels impossibly far away. Yet rough-legged hawks still cross the pale sky. Elk move where the wind has exposed grass. Bighorn sheep find the ledges. A grizzly sleeps or searches beyond the ridge. Little brown bats wait in darkness. The place has never been empty. It has only stopped arranging itself for people. That thought changes the whole frontier. Every ruined cabin is new shelter for something small. Every battlefield becomes food for scavengers and then grass again. A railway can cut through migration, but weeds grow beside the track and birds perch on the telegraph wire. The world absorbs human dreams without promising to remember them. Dutch's speeches disappear into air. Hoofprints remain for a while, then snow fills them. Arthur's own tracks follow the same law. He rides through mud and leaves a mark. Rain softens it. An animal crosses over it. By morning the road belongs to no one again. His journal preserves more than the ground does, but even the journal eventually passes to John. The animals he drew keep their shapes on paper after the living individuals have gone. In that small way, observation becomes a form of care. Nothing about the frontier's wildlife is completely gentle. Hawks take rabbits, wolves bring down deer, alligators seize prey at the waterline, winter starves the weak. Humans add rifles, traps, markets, railroads, and fashion to that old violence. Beauty does not cancel any of it. The game feels honest because it allows beauty and suffering to occupy the same clearing without forcing one to explain the other. A perfect pelt is beautiful because the animal was healthy. A legendary coat is beautiful because it was singular. A plume is beautiful because a bird grew it. Every material points backward to a life, and every life points outward to a habitat. Once the chain becomes visible, the satchel is no longer full of isolated objects, it is full of places. There is Lake Isabella in the White Bison Horn, Oangela in the Beaver Tooth, Katora Springs in the Wolf Heart, Big Valley in the Buck Antler, Scarlet Meadows in the Fox Claw, Blue Water Marsh in the Boar Tusk, Rio Bravo in the Pronghorn Horn. The talismans Arthur carries are a second map, smaller and stranger, built from encounters he survived and animals that did not. His horse carries the rest. A saddle made from alligator or beaver, pelts laid across the back, birds tied at the side, fish stowed after a cold morning, meat meant for camp. The horse stands between wilderness and home, bearing the weight of what Arthur takes. It also bears Arthur himself. No other animal is asked to carry so much of the game's meaning in literal form. For all the rare species and difficult hunts, the final image does not need to be legendary. It can be a common whitetail at dawn. The deer steps out after rain, ears turning toward a sound too distant for us to hear. It lowers its head. Water slips from leaves. No challenge begins. No weapon is selected. For a few seconds, the animal is not a resource, clue, trophy, omen, or symbol of honor. It is simply alive. The moment passes because all such moments do. The deer notices the road and moves into trees. A blue jay calls. Somewhere lower in the valley a fox is listening beneath the grass. Far above, an eagle turns without flapping. The systems continue outside the frame, carrying hunger, fear, play, migration, and rest into places Arthur will never visit. There is nothing left to hunt tonight, no perfect hide to find, and no empty page waiting to be filled. The binoculars can lower, the rifle can remain across the saddle. Let the marsh settle without footsteps. Let the desert cool beneath the condor's empty sky. Let the lake hold its fish below the last reflection of evening. The ranch dogs have stopped barking. Chickens are quiet in their coops. Cattle stand together behind dark fences. Rufus has found a place near the house. Out in the open country, pronghorns rest where they can see danger coming, while owls take possession of the hours that belong to them. Farther north, snow begins to cover the trail. It settles into wolf tracks along the broad print of a moose and across the place where a horse passed earlier. Soon the marks are only shallow shadows. Soon even those are gone. The animals do not need anyone to watch over them now. Their rivers, forests, cliffs, fields, and dark little hiding places are still there. Let the whole living map grow quiet in its own order. Wings fold. Hooves stop. Water closes over the last turning fish. A horse breathes slowly beside a dying fire, warm air clouding once before it disappears into the cold. The frontier will keep moving through the night, but there is no need to follow it any farther. Rest now. The road can wait until morning. Good night, and sleep well.